Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Hijr, chapter 15. We will cover verses 61 to 77 in today's presentation. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any query or question. Let us recap so far covered in this surah. The Quran is a complete evidence-based book of guidance for mankind. Events in the human world follow known laws and values. Those who pass the message of Allah to others should never be fearful of being called insane or mad. This is part of their training for the development of the self. Mainly it is because people who do not have the understanding of the Quran, they are quite happy with the state in which they are. And when we draw their attention to something higher and better, then they find difficult to come to terms with this new message. But there will be some people who will deliberately oppose it. People who look for miracles in worldly life do not understand the functioning of the law of requital. In the universe, nothing is miraculous. The Quran, which is the Arabic text, is preserved and protected for all times. There are enough resources for sustenance kept in the planet for all times for mankind. Their equitable distribution is the responsibility of man in power. Competitiveness is kept within us, which is meant to be directed towards doing solid deeds. Most human beings, they compete in worldly material benefits. No harm in doing that, but that should not be the primary aim of our lives. The primary aim should be to excel each other in righteousness so that this world becomes a better place for everyone. Everything in the world is created from water. Life and death in the universe follows Allah's laws, and these are kept out with the control of human hands. For example, our physical death. Those who tread on the path of the Quran see tangible benefits as described in various verses. Their developed self becomes evidence of their being on Sirat al-Mustaqim. The model of Ibrahim is presented to be borne in mind. He followed the wahi of Allah and benefited in this life and achieved the successes of the life of the hereafter. Now let us look at first set of verses 61 to 64. By using the Quranic lens, we can witness the functioning of the law of requital. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ آلَ لُوطٍ الْمُرْسَلُونَ قَالَ إِنَّكُمْ قَوْمٌ مُنْكَرُونَ قَالُوا بَلْ جِئْنَاكَ بِمَا كَانُوا فِيهِ يَمْتَرُونَ وَأَتَيْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ. Then when these messengers came to the nation of Lut, Lut told them that you do not appear to be from this place, you appear to be strangers. If you remember, some messengers visited Ibrahim, and they gave him the glad tidings of a son who will be very knowledgeable. And over there, they also discussed that what is their purpose after meeting Ibrahim. And they said that now they are going to the people of Lut, and this is where the next part of the account starts. They replied, "It is correct that we are not from among those who live here, but we have come to tell you about the matter regarding which these people dispute with you, i.e., the destruction about which you warn them, and they say that if you are truthful, then show it to us by bringing it on. We have come in order to make that destruction a concrete reality before them. We state an absolute truth. This will indeed happen." So these messengers of Allah who had gone to Hazrat Ibrahim, and Ibrahim alayhi salam did not recognize them. And the same is situation over here. Hazrat Lut alayhi salam also did not recognize them. So they were stranger to him as well. Now, warning is a must before the destruction of any people in the world. These are some further reflections on these verses. Here, the messengers of Allah are used to warn the people of Lut about the imminent destruction which is about to visit their place. At that time, the state of development of the societies was not at a stage where they could figure out themselves with certainty that what they have sown is now about to be reaped. This is my comment. People always, human beings had some rational side of their thinking, and they can always figure out what is happening around them. But if they are so intoxicated in following their own desires, then they tend to forget and ignore the signs around them. In today's world, man has reached that state of rationally developed thought that they can see the efforts of their own deeds over a fairly long period of time. As a cause and effect, we know that in today's world, people know it, particularly at a collective level, that what they are doing, whether right or wrong, is going to bear results. And so we should never be deluded that somehow people at the helm of affairs do not know what they are doing. In fact, they plan it in a way that they want the results to follow their desires. They want a desired outcome, but things sometimes do not go as they wish. They know exactly what they are doing, and this is why they use all kinds of tricks to mislead the majority and hide their true intentions. However, Allah has informed us, وَقَدْ مَكَرُوا مَكْرَهُمْ وَإِنْدَ اللَّهِ مَكْرُهُمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ مَكْرُهُمْ لِتَزُولَ مِنْهُ الْجِبَالُ. If you remember, we covered this verse under Surah Ibrahim, where Quran says that they also planned and we also plan. And Allah's plan, because it follows the law of requital, it is not going to spare anyone. And these people who are rejectors of the guidance of Allah, their plans are so massive, so mighty at times that they could move the mountains, but against the law of requital, nothing can help them in the long run. The law of requital of Allah does not spare any of our deeds. So this is important that we have gone through it many times, but it's good to remind ourselves that the law of requital does not spare anyone. The moment we commit a deed, its effects immediately start manifesting themselves. They may not be visible initially, but ultimately everything comes together. The most important issue here for Allah is that Lut had to be informed either through direct wahi or through the medium of other messengers of Allah. For example, in the case of Nuh, direct wahi was used to warn of the flood. وَقَالَ نُوحٌ رَبِّ لَا تَذَرْ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ دَيَّارًا. Over here, Nuh already had understood that the state of his people was at that stage where the law of requital has reached that stage where the consequences of their deeds are going to be manifested. And here Nuh is asking for the promised punishment to now arrive, and nothing good can come out of these people. So as Nuh himself now came to this conclusion that this nation should be destroyed, because whatever is happening over here, not much good can come out of it. Even their children are going to follow the same path which their parents have followed. It's worth looking at Surah Nuh, and there are a lot of instructions over there. He was informed through wahi, wasna il-fulka bi-ayunina wa wahyina wa la tukhatibni fil lazina zalamu innahum mughraqun. And Allah guided him to build his ship, and he was guided through wahi. And then he was also told that when the destruction comes, do not ask me about the unjust people once they are going to be drowned, that save them. And if we remember, Hazrat Nuh did pray for the protection of his son, and he was told that his son was not from him. Because in terms of ideology, then there is a difference between Momineen and those who are Kafirin. Note the guidance given here: to not get upset when these unjust people are drowned. In fact, this is to be expected, as this indicates the next stage in the evolution of human progress in the world. Because the way the world works, and we know through the law of requital, those who have to go forward, they go forward, and those who wish to lag behind, they lag behind, and it depends on their own choice. So this world is based on our choices. So we have to make a choice that where we wish to be in the hereafter. Here this method is used, that is the sending of the messengers. The possible reason could be that Lut had not yet reached this conclusion that these people have crossed the threshold of their evil deeds. Remember the reaction of Ibrahim, where he started arguing and saying that can they be given a bit more respite. Adding to this, we will see in the next verses that Lut is firmly instructed not to become lax, i.e. to leave that place, as Allah does not wish him and Momineen to be included in this total destruction. Now let us look at the next two verses, 65 and 66. Allah's guidance needs to be figured out in all its finer details. فَأَسْرِ بِأَهْلِكَ بِقِطْعٍ مِّنَ اللَّيْلِ وَاتَّبِعْ أَدْبَارَهُمْ وَلَا يَلْتَفِتْ مِنْهُمْ أَحَدٌ وَامْضُوا حَيْثُ تُؤْمَرُونَ وَقَضَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ ذَلِكَ الْأَمْرَ أَنَّ دَابِرَ هَؤُلَاءِ مَقْطُوعٌ مُصْبِحِينَ. Over here, Quran says, therefore, after a part of the night has passed, leave this place, taking your Jamaat along with you. Now, this could be taken from the messengers of Allah who told Lut that this is what you should do. Let them go ahead and follow behind. In a time of danger, the Imam, i.e., leader, should leave after the rest and get out from here in such a way as to never look back. So the situation is put before him that it is going to be serious and these people are going to be destroyed. And Allah does not want the Messenger of Allah and Momineen to get destroyed with them. Hence, they are guided on this aspect. And go to that place to which you have been directed by Allah, and we inform Lut via Wahi that by morning the roots of this nation will be severed. Being meticulous is part of being Momineen. So what I have done over here is put some comments for our own guidance as of today in today's world. Here the Quran has directed Lut and the Momineen with him that they need to leave taking precautions as the people of the town are not friendly. Similar instruction was provided to Moses. If we can have a look on this verse as well. فَأَسْرِ بِعِبَادِي لَيْلًا إِنَّكُمْ مُتَّبَعُونَ. Just notice the term, my servants. Take them out at night and remember, you will definitely be pursued. The people in power are going to pursue the weaker people. We can see in the word that even weaker countries who are doing no harm to the rich country, they are still being exploited and pursued in every respect. And this is the way unguided human intellect functions. Just imagine the state of uncertainty and fear which human beings must feel in such situations. And this fear is felt by those who are not fully conversant with the situation, who are not fully aware of it. If one knows under the Wahi, then one is warned of it in advance. For example, through the Quran, we know which way the world is heading and what situation is going to arise, maybe not in a too distant future. However, Moses was informed that وَاتْرَكِ الْبَحْرَ رَهْوًا إِنَّهُمْ جُنْدٌ مُغْرَقُونَ. The water will be receded on the way for your safe passage and will engulf Pharaoh's army later. That is the physical law. So Pharaoh pursued the Bani Israel when Moses took them out along with his army, got drowned. There is an instruction here to observe and keep track of the events around us so that we know when the time to move will arrive. If it does materialize in our life, if not, then it is fine. Just depart from here contentedly and objectively, thinking that this is all I could do in my finite existence on this planet. So we should keep it in mind that how the events are moving around us. If we are not part of a system of deen and we are trying to establish the system of deen and developing our own self, then accordingly we can use the light of the Quran. The issue here is to not be tied intellectually to land, homes, unguided families, jobs, emotive affinities, etc. Being on the Quran, our aim is on the eternal level of our life, and we need to be fully conscious of it all the time. If Lut and Momineen had not left the place, they would have been counted among those who transgressed against the laws of Allah. For example, such as the wife of Lut. The Quran states that Momineen are not treated like Kafirin, i.e., they must figure out the trend of events in the world using the Quranic lens. Being destroyed with Kafirin means all efforts go wasted to different ideologies of life. I put down these comments for our future reference and people who are watching this presentation later on, that if the situation in the world, despite their efforts, does not change, then they should act by following the guidance which Hazrat Lut and Momineen followed and other messengers followed. Because the opportunity does arise where they can get out of the place where the destruction is about to visit. Of course, all this has to be thought out well in advance for various possible scenarios emerging at some point in the future. Knowing that the human world is meant to be dynamic and subjected to continuous change, we need to be aware of this and be part of this dynamism in a positive sense. For example, the permanent value of Yamuruna bil Maruf wa Yanhauna anil Munkar, that is, promote good as directed by the Quran and forbid evil. And its outcome will point to the state of development of a society. Because these things gradually disappear from the society which are about to be destroyed. And this is important that we should continue following this path. And wherever possible, we should forbid evil and promote the value of the Quran. Now, next set of verses, 67 to 71, confrontation between Haqq and Batil accelerates. وَجَاءَ أَهْلُ الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ قَالَ إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ ضَيْفِي فَلَا تَفْضَحُونِ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُخْزُونِي قَالُوا أَوَلَمْ نَنْهَكَ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ قَالَ هَؤُلَاءِ بَنَاتِي إِن كُنتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. Very interesting verses. Here now the confrontation starts between Hazrat Lut and the people of his town. Here this was being discussed, and on the other side, when the inhabitants of the town learned about the newcomers, they arrived celebrating. Because the news spread in a town or a village very quickly that some newcomers have arrived with Lut, and in any case, they were on a confrontational state with Hazrat Lut, because Hazrat Lut was forbidding evil and promoting good, and these people did not like it. So they immediately learned that some messengers, some human beings, some men have arrived at the place of Lut, and they must be not happy with any visitors coming to Hazrat Lut. Lut told them that these are my guests, do not disgrace me by behaving improperly with them. It is obvious if some guests come to our house and our neighbors and people around come to our house and start protesting or passing bad remarks, then it becomes a very embarrassing situation. Follow the law of Allah and do not be a cause for my humiliation. They said to Lut, did we not tell you not to accommodate people from other nations at your abode? No, if you do the very thing from which we had forbidden you, then bear the consequences. At this, Lut replied that if some male stranger happens to come this way, that does not mean that you should become attracted to him. Quran has said that these people had also promoted homosexuality, that is the relationships between men and men. And this may be in reference to that. These women folk of yours who are like daughters to me are there. Fulfill your sexual desire through them. Of course, as the Lut promoted the natural law of husband and wife among the people. And he is over here reminding them that you should not do this. These are my guests, and these kind of things I don't appreciate you talking about these things in front of them. But of course, these people were intoxicated in their evil desires. Finer aspects of this confrontation. Here arrives the final moment before the end of these rebellious people. Haqq is confronted by Batil in this scenario at a micro scale. These people have reached that state of human debasement where nothing good can come out of them, and like Nuh's conclusion that وَقَالَ نُوحٌ رَبِّ لَتَذَرْ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ دَيَّارًا. Whereas Nuh had said that don't leave any of these people on earth because they will only spread evil. Nuh put his conclusion before Allah that these people have reached that height of their evil that they need to be eliminated from the planet. Evil always keeps an eye on the conduct of Momineen, and this is part of intelligence gathering. And same goes for Momineen, that they should be very alert and not to have a very naive view of the world around them, and does not miss any opportunity to harm them. Pharaoh pursued Bani Israel. Rasulullah had to hide in a cave. Here too, Lut and Momineen were treated terribly by these grossly unjust people. The elimination of evil people through destruction may appear a very harsh statement to those who are beneficiaries of the system if we do not use the lens of the Quran and instead utilize our emotions being the beneficiaries of the unjust system. The issue before Allah, i.e. the Quran, is the purpose of human creation, the creation of the universe, the life of the hereafter, and the human self's development on an eternal scale. So Quran indicates to us that this word is created as haqq and for constructive results. It has to go forward. it cannot stay static or go backward. And those people who try to hinder this process of haq, they are tolerated for the time being, but ultimately they get destroyed and eliminated. And our position, those who understand the Quran, is that we should keep this in mind all the time, that those people who are retrogressive and taking things backward or keeping things status quo and are not interested in haq, they will be eliminated at some point in time if there is no Jamaat-e-Momineen in the world. Ideally, there should be a Jamaat-e-Momineen in the world, a system of deen which should take care of it and counter it. We need to constantly keep in mind the consequences of the unjust system established by the pharaohs of the world and keep reminding ourselves that Allah has stated, وَلَا يَخَافُ عُقْبَاهَا, that Allah's system is such that Allah has absolutely no hesitation, no reluctance, no fear of implementing his law of requital. And that is the way we should develop our own intellect. Our own psyche should work on those lines. Never have any apprehension in taking evil people to task. Now, continuing verses 67 to 71, the Quran builds the case around Momineen at its center. Some further reflections: we can look around in today's world and count the number of Momineen who are on the path of the pure Quran and who earnestly desire the system of deen, who have rejected this man-devised system and the evil it is pursuing across the world, as a consequence of which every kind of human slavery is accelerating. We can see and witness it ourselves. What should the law of requital do? Just keep extending the time of respite, and Allah should keep witnessing this evil before his eyes, and nothing should happen despite having some Momineen on the planet. And this is an important point, that should it continue forever, we can see the consequences of evil in the world. And in every part of the world, there is exploitation going on, and the human beings are suffering. And should it continue like that, and when the punishment comes, when the destruction comes through human hands, then we should be looking forward to it rather than just sitting there and then start moaning about it as well. So we should keep an objective view of the world all the time. This is the kind of thinking we need to create within us from this account of the destruction of the people of that town, the signs of which still exist in the area of Jordan. One thing is clear from this account, that events in the human world, as per the law of requital, do not follow human desires. And we should always keep this in mind, not start praying for something which we know is wrong when we use the Quranic value system. We should make sure that we are not part of this destruction caused by the law of requital. We will not get a knock on our door from any messenger of Allah. We will need to figure it out collectively ourselves on this platform. The importance of Momineen is stated in this verse. وَلَوْ رِجَالٌ مُؤْمِنُونَ وَالنِّسَاءٌ مُؤْمِنَاتٌ لَهُمْ تَعْلَمُوهُمْ أَنْ تَطَاعُوهُمْ فَتُصِيبَكُمْ مِنْهُمْ مَعَرَّةٌ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. There were such Mu'min men and women in Mecca about whom you did not know. If you remember, Muslim Momineen were going to attack Mecca, but their hands were withheld. If you had attacked, then they would have also suffered, and thus this would have caused you loss in ignorance. So the point over here, which I'm trying to make, is that Momineen are the ones around which the whole law of requital functions. And we should keep it in mind that our efforts never go wasted. So we should keep pursuing this path, fully convinced that the results will appear at some point in time in the future. This is what makes creation of the universe al-haq, to produce constructive results. In this stage of our striving, we need to first establish our own true worth and value in our own hearts and minds. Because if we are not convinced ourselves, then how are we going to convince others? We cannot pass on the message convincingly to others. So important is that we understand the focal point of the Quran, which is about haq. 1572, possession of unbridled power intoxicates human beings. La amruka innahum lafi sakratihim yamahun. Now, there can be two interpretations of this particular verse. Though it is a small verse, but there is a lot into it. Over here, Quran says there can be two meanings of this verse. The translation is, if this expression is related to these guests of Lut. If we relate this verse to the messengers who had come to Lut to inform about the imminent destruction of his people, then this is what it will mean. Taking an oath on your life, that is, the messengers say to Lut, these people were becoming blind in their evil intoxication. When they saw all this demonstrating before their eyes, they told Lut that these people are totally mad, and if they are going to be destroyed, they will be rightly destroyed. Second meaning can be if Allah is addressing Rasulullah, when this verse was revealed, then it can be, I testify on your precious life. That is, Allah is saying to Rasulullah, because Allah was a witness to all what was taking place in that era between Lut and his people. Those people were becoming blind under the intensity of their emotions. Therefore, how are they going to listen to Lut? And further details are in the next slide. Now, display of this power intoxication is being witnessed in the world of today. And what I have done is, it is better to relate it to our world as of today. If this is to be considered an expression of these guests, then the meaning will be that they are saying to Lut, what kind of people are you wasting your intellect on? They are becoming blind due to the intensity of their sexual desires. They cannot even understand what you are saying to them. Because when people are intoxicated, we have seen people who take alcohol. At that stage, their intellectual understanding and their rational side is very weak. And a lot of them swear and they're falling around, and because they cannot use their rational side effectively, and it is befogged. What effect can advice and warning have on the individual who is inebriated with an intoxicant? And emotions also do the same. This is what the Quran says over here, that our mental state becomes infected if we do not follow the rational side of our thinking and we do not follow the values of the Quran. And if this is to be taken as a side comment, then the meaning will be that while describing the account, Allah has told Rasulullah, who can be a more precise witness than Allah himself? Because over here, we are to be guided, that when we are looking around our world and we see people, how they are intoxicated by power and how they behave and how they create conflict and wars in the world and how they create poverty in the world, we should look at them and see that this is what the Quran has already warned us about. So we should, one thing is absolutely clear, that these people are not going to change, and they are on the path of self-destruction. So issue is, what are we going to do about it? And that is what the Quran is guiding in these verses. The question which needs our attention is, why do people reach such a stage of depravity that their rational side becomes totally obscured? The answer is that since we do not have any inner guidance and are at the mercy of our unbridled desires, when we start succeeding in getting what we want and we have made the means available for expanding these desires, then this is what we become. And that is why we can see that in the world, wherever there are wars, people do not listen to the rational side, because the powerful side wishes to destroy the other side and subjugate them completely. Hence the need for, that is why Quran says, if you are Aziz, you should be Hakim as well. فَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. And these attributes come together, and we should manifest these as well, because Allah is Aziz and Hakim. Gaining knowledge to become Aziz and Hakim. Under this spell of power, the ability to look rationally at the wider picture disappears. This is what the Quran refers to as saying, Zuyyana lahu su'u amalehi wattaba'u ahwahum. I.e., evil deeds become attractive, and then Quran says, Lahum qulubun la yafqahuna biha wa lahum ayunun la yubsiruna biha wa lahum azanun la yasmauna biha. That is, their thinking and seeing and all perceptive abilities also are neutralized, and they do not use them effectively and keep making mistakes. Human beings have all the cognitive potentials required to follow the correct path, but if they make wrong choices, then there is no sympathy for them in Allah's law of requital. And same goes for us. We shouldn't have any sympathy for them as well, because when they they are committing these evil deeds, they are harming others. They are the ones who create fear and huzen in the world. So we should be very firm-hearted, very steadfast, and stand up against them. And before that, build up our own self. Verses 73 to 74, the outcome of natural events needs to be studied by their effects. فَأَخَذَتْهُمُ الصَّيْحَةُ مُشْرِقِينَ فَجَعَلْنَا عَالِيَهَا سَافِلَهَا وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهِ حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ. In short, as soon as the sun rose, a devastating earthquake overtook them, and such a hailstorm of stones descended upon them from a volcano that the whole town was turned upside down. So this town now got destroyed, and through this natural destructive process. And of course, we know that these things do not appear suddenly. They must have felt the tremors before that, but they decided to stay put and not to leave the place. In any case, they were not going to leave and going to do everything against Lut's direction and his instruction. Verses 73, 74, physical life of all human beings ends in death. The Quran draws our attention to its importance. Death is a fact of life. It makes little difference if all our life we are misguided and we reject the message of Allah and then die, whether we have a 90 years of life or 100 years of life, or we had a life of 50 years. That is not an issue. Issue over here is that what are we going to do within the finite span of life before we die? It is the devastating outcome of the conduct of those human beings who elect to follow the wrong path of life in this world and cut short their physical existence. Then there is no further evolution in the hereafter. Each day on the wrong path is a waste of human life. We have gone through these things before as well. Though it is in reference to an apparently natural disaster, we need to find a correlation between the deeds and the timing of this disaster. Allah used the light of Wahi to warn Lut and Momineen about the imminent arrival of this earthquake, which others ignored. Why do human beings ignore these warnings? We see this even in today's world. Why do human beings in power not correctly value their life? Because they think that it is a battle system and there is no law of requital or any other laws working in their life, and there is no life after their death. Hence, since the life will end with death, there is no accountability. So whatever they can accumulate and gather in this life, that is to their benefits. They do not see other human beings as equal beings. In terms of the consequences, Allah has made it very clear that when the time of respite ends, then there is no more tolerance in the system. And this is a beautiful verse, فَمَا بَقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَا كَانُوا مُنْظَرِينَ. That neither the heavens nor the earth shed any tears and no respite is given. And we can see that if we look at the rise and fall of nations and the way they were destroyed. Some were destroyed through their own hands, others were destroyed by natural destructions and the natural events. Then nothing happened. The world goes on, and Allah's system is only pursuing haqq. So batil is bound to disappear, whether in a shorter run or in a longer run. This is based on evidence, and we see this process of physical death before our eyes in the world. At an individual level, we all know we are going to die one day. And then we should see that, just imagine that when I'm not around, this world will go on. I will not be here. So that means that my own life is important, and I should look at it the way I'm living it, and whether I'm following the values of the Quran or I'm living a life without following the values of the Quran. The media is very good in covering disasters and deaths, whether through natural events or deliberately caused by human hands. So it is not that there is dearth of information. There is a lot going on in the world, and human beings can solve those problems. But those in power do not wish to solve their problems. In fact, they create problems. The Quran also makes it clear here that when we come to know that the destruction is due to the deeds of these evildoers, then we should not go back. Instead, our life as Momineen is important. As we have survived the cataclysmic event, we need to get on with the task of being otherwise giving us respite by protecting us from this catastrophe is meaningless. That is for example, in this particular account, Hazrat Lut and Momineen who were saved, They must have gone to some other place where they would have established the system of deen among those people who survived that destruction. Lut did not turn back to save his wife, and same was true of Nuh, Moses, Saleh, Shuaib. So these examples are for us to see that how things are guided by the Quran. For example, in the case of Hazrat Yusuf, he managed to establish the system, and the system survived for a long time after his death. So it depends that how events take place in the life of every messenger and how the people react to those to the guidance of Allah. Verses 75-77, learning from the signs of the past nations and their conduct is part of becoming Momineen. Inna fi zalika la ayatin lil mutawassimin wa innaha la bisabilin muqim. Inna fi zalika la ayatin lil mu'minin. So after going through this account of Hazrat Ibrahim and Lut, the Quran is now summing it up through these three verses. Verily, in this event, there are great signs of instruction for those people who wish to reach the truth by using their understanding and reasoning. The town of the people of Lut was not an unfamiliar location. It was situated on that route where continuity of movement is still taking place. That is why these people can see the ruins while traveling back and forth on this route. This is on the side of the Dead Sea, and the town is still there, and it is well marked in Jordan. If anyone can get a chance, they should go and visit it. Surely there are signs in these ruins for determining the truth for those people who have Iman in the law of requital. Finally, verses 75 to 77, the Quran places deen within our reach. Here the Quran has guided us on using the signs dispersed on the face of the earth to draw correct conclusions. The Quran has called these as la'ayatin lil mutawassimin, such concrete signs which lead to getting benefits from them. If we see the signs and do not benefit, then they are pointless. They don't mean anything to us. So the Quran is asking us that we should go around the earth with an open eyes and look at that what happened to those people who resided on the earth before us, because that reminding is good for us and we stick to the values of the Quran. These need to be made part of the education of the children, i.e. the functioning of the law of requital with examples cited from our own time. The rise and fall of the initial era of Islam and the subsequent destruction of many dynasties stand as a testimony of the law of rise and fall of nations. For example, Umayyads, Abbasids, Moors in Spain, Mughals in India, more recently the history of the Ottoman Empire, etc. The Muslims today occupy a big chunk of planet Earth with massive natural resources which can help them acquire new life if they just come to the light of the pure Quran. This is why they are warned, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Over here, Quran says that you tell others that you should do good. Bir, we know the meaning of bir is very vast, that all righteousness comes into it. That you tell others that you should do good and you forget your own self, and whereas you read the book as well. And we know that how frequently the Quran is read by or studied by Muslims. Afala taqilun, don't you use your intellect that this book is for you? It is hypocrisy to tell others that you should do good and our own selves if we don't do good and do not follow the Quran. And they are guided to follow it. Allazina atainahumul kitaba yatlunahu haqqa tilawatihi ulaika yu'minuna bihi. And over here, Quran says that those who are given this book, yatlunahu haqqa tilawatihi, they study it the way it should be studied. And they are the Momineen, ulaika yu'minuna bihi. And that is the way they should have Iman in it. Because Iman is meaningless if we do not understand the Quran. We have to understand the Quran first and its value system and the divine attributes, and then manifest those, and then we should be having a full conviction as Quran has explained. For example, in the verse 2:177. Verses such as this ask us to use its guidance to bring about a change in the world. The first step is to understand it ourselves. Next is, here the Quran has asked us to not be in despair as we have the Quran and after acquiring Iman. Just see that how we are guided through the account of Hazrat Lut and other messengers. That Quran has placed before us that everything in this world is can be learned, we can educate ourselves, and we should know it, and we should remain warned as well, so that we do not become part of the destruction of those who follow the wrong path. If we learn from these historical events, then success and prosperity can be achieved with the help of Allah. There's another point which came to my mind is that in this story, have we seen that when these people died, Allah separated Hazrat Lut and Momineen right in this world from them. So that is important, that we should, through the Quran, we should exactly know that intellectually, that is cognitively, where do we stand vis-a-vis others who do not accept the message of the Quran and its guidance. Because they are the ones, by rejecting Allah's message, they are the ones who contribute to wrongs in the world, who contribute to the evil in the world. The recipe is there which still has the same potency as it once manifested for all to see in the world. And Quran has said, we have gone through this verse before as well, Man kana yuridul izzata falillahil izzatu jamiyan ilayhi yasadul kalimul tayyibu wal amalu salihu yarfa'uhu. The Quran over here said that anyone who is looking for power, that is Jamaat al-Momineen, what they should do is that they should come to the Quran collectively. Falillahil izzatu jamiya. They should know that power can be achieved complete, all kinds of power can be acquired by following Allah's laws. And what they should do is they should know that whatever good deeds they do, kalimul tayyibu, that the values which they follow, the righteous values, tayyib values, these rise and these are bound to produce good results. For example, in the case of Hazrat Yusuf, Hazrat Ibrahim, and other messengers of Allah. And how it happens is, wal amalu salihu yarfa'uhu, that these righteous deeds, these lift them up, these give them height. And we have seen it ourselves that as we progress in the understanding of the Quran and also do solid deeds, our own self keeps developing. Iman and solid deeds provide us with that self which can accomplish all this in one lifespan. And with that, I come to the end of this presentation. Thanks for your time and for sharing this presentation. Please feel free to share it with your contacts.